Everybody, and welcome to the MentorLi podcast. We're excited to have you with us. I'm here joined by Ben Davidson, author of the Get Hired Guarantee, and we're so excited to be chatting to Ben a little bit more about his tips and tricks for landing a job in today's new normal. The pandemic has hit. There's been, a huge gap in unemployment, and so Ben has fortunately written a book on the subject on how to improve your chances of landing a job, even when you might not be the typical fit for the role, even when you might be facing a situation that is more difficult than usual. So we're going to be chatting to them about that. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us, before we get started, I wanted to do something while I was at LinkedIn. We would always ask in a meeting, it was always interesting, tell us something that's not on your LinkedIn profile. So yeah, maybe you can give folks an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you. Tell us something about yourself that's not on your LinkedIn profile.
Sure, yeah. Super excited to be here. One of the things that makes me different than a lot of others is that I have worked in the sales industry, then HR, back to sales, and then back to HR. And doing that flip-flop twice gave me a lot of the experience I needed to figure out how to get hired without having the right job title, without having the exact perfect experience, and how to get referred, which I think really ties into what MentorLi does. So one of the things that's not in my profile is I spent 5 months as a business-to-business telecom sales rep. And one of the things that was really interesting about that is getting the job, which is a process that I outlined in my book. But when I was actually in those 5 months on the job, I had to do my own marketing under the radar from our corporate marketing team. And so there's a image in the book of a big tower with someone with a machine gun, and it says marketing department on it. And then it shows a cartoon of me creeping around underneath. And I literally would set up websites and send out newsletters, and I would brand it with complimentary partner products and logos and their name, because I couldn't use my own company's name or logo because it's a big corporate entity, telco. And so I was in what I called an extern for them, so I could use the job title I wanted, and I would put a lot of information out there and give free educational webinars and seminars, and I helped out every IT department in my geographic territory. And the sales would pour in from that, but I had to get my own experience and my own job title to make it happen. And I incorporated that into the book, The Get Hired Guarantee, because it's all about how too often employers use an excuse called the skills gap. You don't have enough experience, you don't have the right job title. And the way the internet has leveled the playing field for all companies now, small and large, can compete. It's the same with all job applicants, small and large. You can develop the experience you need. And so that's something that's not on my LinkedIn profile, is that I spent 5 months as a B2B sales rep doing my own marketing below the radar. And those are the marketing principles that I learned that can help job seekers stand out, even if they don't have the exact right job title or a number of years experience that a big recruiting department is looking for.
That's incredible. It's incredibly scrappy as well. Like, there's not many people that have their underground marketing department going on in the background while they're selling for a company. But that's really cool, and I'm sure that you saw a lot of success from that, being able to sell. So that's awesome, Ben. I guess you've had this interesting career. You alluded to it a little bit in your comments earlier. But you graduated in, I think it was 2004, from Idaho State University, and then you went into sales directly, but you've transitioned from a sales position going into a position of VP of HR for one of Idaho's top employers. what, I mean, how do you make that transition? What was the actual story behind it? Were you thinking, hey, sales isn't for me, or was it just an opportunity that came along? Like, what's the story there, going from graduation all the way up to landing a job as VP of HR?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2001 from ISU, and I didn't do any of those aptitude tests, never went to the career center. I was all about just show me the money, took the job that paid the best, and it was telecom sales. So went into that and ended up hating it and transitioning over into HR because there was a position within the company that no one wanted. It was labor relations, working with the labor union. So I represented the company in grievances and negotiations, and it paid really well. So, hey, I went for it. Oddly enough, I had a knack for it, which in my book, I describe it as a concept called natural talent. So I really recommend that people take those personality tests like the Myers-Briggs, and I have a link to it in the book to take it for free. So I did HR for quite a while. I still remember the first grievance meeting I had with the grizzled unionist who took his boot off and pounded it on the desk.
You're kidding.
And started cursing at me, and I thought it was amusing, but I didn't laugh because one of the things I'm good at is just working towards a win-win, staying calm, and had great relationships for many years doing that job. And then the company got acquired for the second time, and the ups and downs of being acquired and large mergers. The company started with 60,000 employees when I started with them and ended up at 30,000 by the time I left. So just a brutal time to be in telecom with the bubble bursting and then the Great Recession. And so all my time in HR really helped me see a lot of the difficult things that happen. And so when I got recruited to come over to Idaho Central Credit Union, best place to work in Idaho, award winner, that was almost 9 years ago. And so it's been a good 20 plus year journey, most of it in HR. And that's taught me a lot of things.
Wow. Can I just come back to something real quick? The unionists slammed their shoe against the table. What on earth do you say to someone to get them to take their shoe off and slam it on the table?
It wasn't me. It was the principle of the thing. So solidarity.
Yeah, seriously. I'm going to do that one day. I'm going to be like, you know what? I'm putting my shoe on the table for this, slamming it on. That's cool. Awesome. And part of this journey I think it was in March this year, you released a book, The Get Hired Guarantee. Yeah. And you talk about some of the strategies that you've learned. Talking about doing the hard yards, like you've done the hard yards, you've transitioned from two completely different areas of the business, and you've seen great success with it, and you put it in this book. I guess tell us, I mean, what were some of your thoughts behind, writing the book? What was it that made you want to do it? Like, what was the motivation there?
Yeah, I enjoy writing, and so I've been working on this for 8 or 9 years, and it started kind of through some journaling that I did. My story is woven throughout the book of how I first got into sales and how I was able to get out of sales using the job search techniques that I learned to get into HR, and then how to avoid layoffs during one of the acquisitions. I was able to get back into sales because it allowed me to stay here in Idaho where I really want to live. And then after I decided I hated that, using the job search principles to get back into HR. But the whole premise of the book really is around that the problem is not with the job applicant. The problem is our broken hiring system. So the whole process of how we hire hasn't changed in several hundred years. Basically, we hang out a help wanted sign, and then we hope that the right applicants come and apply. And the ways that we evaluate the applicants really are not statistically valid either. The book shows an important study that was done at the University of Michigan, and how the wrong way to look for the right candidate is number of years experience, the education that's on their resume. Those are very weak predictors of if someone is going to be a top performer in a job. really we should be doing job tryouts. We should be doing structured assessments and simulations. And so what I've done is written into the book how you can create your own virtual internship. I call it an externship. Get the right job title and the right years of experience doing this, and then use an educational interview to share this with employers and actually find out what they need so you can give them value. One of the things that I did, for example, when I wanted to get a B2B sales job so I could stay in Idaho, was I knew that coming from HR was not what the hiring manager wanted to hear in this B2B telecom sales job. So rather than call him and say, hey, I applied, I really love blah, 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 trying to get going to care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about job applicants. He probably hates hiring. But what he does care about is making sales. So I called all my friends in the geography that owned businesses and convinced them to listen to this guy pitch them on upgrading their telecom system. And then I wrote up a plan for how I would approach each account, sent that to the hiring manager. And within hours, he called me. I'd never talked to him before, but he was super impressed, asked me to come out and interview, and I got the job. And so I learned a lot from that. There's ways that we can stand out, but it's not by being the best applicant. It's figuring out what that hiring manager wants and then getting it to him. Another example I share in the book is that I get calls all day, every day from people trying to sell me HR software.
Yeah.
And I won't listen to really anybody because I get so many of these calls. But when students call me up and ask if they can talk a little bit about HR and work on a school project interviewing me, I'll always do it. And if I were a student, I would be asking me questions that are all outlined in the book, how to do an educational interview around how can I find a better learning management system. And if I were the student, I would offer to do a review on the top vendors in that industry for me, pros and cons, get some pricing, and deliver that to me. That could be their school project, but it's something I actually care about and would listen to, and it would give me real value. Value is what I call it. So do your school projects about what someone actually needs at a company you want to work for.
This is super interesting, Ben, because right now the current landscape is, I mean, it used to be that there were 3% people unemployed in the United States, 2% I think in Utah at one point, and most people had a job, and so companies found it so difficult to get the right person through the door. You know, they would throw everything out there, have all of these events, all of these types of things to try and attract people. That talent market is flipped on its head now, to the point we have like 15% unemployment in the United States, 36 million unemployed, even more than that, job seekers, and they're all trying to get jobs at Idaho's top company, Utah's top company, all of these hot tech companies out there. So why is it important to do these steps that you're outlining right now more than ever?
Yeah, it's really because companies use the skills gap as an excuse for poor hiring. No one's going to ever accuse an HR department of being creative and being willing to take risk to look at a job applicant that may not exactly fit the mold. That's never going to happen. So it's the job applicant's really requirement to make themselves look like the ideal candidate. So what I always tell people is you need to start an externship through the Get Hired guarantee with the exact job title that you want to land. You can be an extern for me, a virtual intern. I don't care what your job title is, but just set that up and then do service work pro bono under the Get Hired guarantee title or other company that I have, a nonprofit. And really, I encourage people to do nonprofit work with the job title they eventually want to land. And one example I did was I set up a podcast just for fun a few years ago. And so on my resume, I have 5 years experience as a podcast host. So if I ever wanted to go into communications, I'd have that on my resume just because I wanted it. Didn't earn a penny of revenue doing it, but got pretty good at it. And I could share recordings with someone that I ever wanted to interview with to show that I have passion for the work. When I interview someone for a job, I really, really love to see passion for the work. And if they have something they can show me, I listen to that all day long.
You know what's super interesting about that is that, I found quickly going out of college to LinkedIn. It's a massive company, 15,000 employees. You work. I mean, you expect coming out of college that you're going to be this big shot. You were the top dog in college. Now you go to a big company and you're like, hey, here I am, and they're like, hey, great, thank you for coming, but you can work on this smaller project and then grow into bigger projects. And the trouble with taking that approach in your career sometimes is that you don't get experience in all of the necessary areas. Now, I work in a startup, right, where we're at MentorLi, we're scrappy, we're doing all of these different things, and my scope is so much bigger. So if I walk into an interview now, I've worked on so many things that would be, that people in a maybe a director or a VP level would be working on at a company like LinkedIn. And so, I love this concept that you're talking about, like create your own internship. Like you can be so scrappy and you can be so creative about what you choose to work on. And then, when you get into that interview, you're like, yeah, actually I've implemented this, I've done this, because you're doing it for free and people love that. And so I love this concept.
One of the virtual interns that I had a few years ago, her name is Shay Lynn, and her dream job was to become an editor at a family lifestyle magazine. I met her probably later in her junior year of college, and she said she wanted to be the editor-in-chief for the Idaho Leader podcast. And I said, okay, sure, great, do it. And so a few hours a week, she would spend writing articles and posting them onto my blog, and she was the editor-in-chief. So when she graduated from college, she had a 1.5 years experience under her belt as an editor-in-chief, and she landed that dream job right out of college, and I gave her a great referral. I mean, that's the way to do it.
Wow, that's incredible. So let's dig into one of these principles a little bit more. So the first step is doing a virtual internship. We've talked a little bit about that. What's the next step? So say someone does their virtual internship for you. They're like, hey, I've got the experience now. I've wet my feet with what I need to do. What's next? What should someone be thinking about next?
Right. So then the next thing is to meet the decision makers within the company that you want to work for. So what I do is outline in the book ways that you can actually get their names and contact information and some email templates to contact them, but do what's called an informational or educational interview. Say that my professor, Ben Davidson, in this course that I'm taking requires me to call you up and to find out a little bit about what you do as a professional. And so ask them questions like, what keeps you up at night? Where's the industry going? If you had more time just to do research on a topic, what would you research? What are some projects that you would like to start that you don't have time for? And then actually do these projects for the person. It becomes part of your work experience in the industry, and it also creates a real relationship with the person that you're interviewing. And then as time goes on, you deliver that information to them, you keep in touch, you find out who does the hiring at that job, what the hiring process looks like, because every company does it differently. And you get the insider information for when you do apply. And then you've got someone on the inside, a mentor, like what the approach MentorLi uses. You've got someone on the inside to be a sponsor for you, and your odds of getting hired go way up when you do that.
Yeah, 100%. And what I love about this method is that I talk to students all the time and folks early in career that do the post and pray method, or kind of like they post their resume as many places as possible, and they come to me and they're like, I've applied 100 times to different companies, and like no one's reached back out to me. And the reason why that's happening is because you haven't talked to anyone there. You made a personal connection. And so when you add value, like you're talking about here, there's this awesome opportunity to get your foot in the door, to make these people aware of you, and then to show them that you are a competent person that can be an employee and fit into the culture there. I think it's just an amazing method to do that. So like, I'm just thinking through the process here. Once you have that person, you've delivered some value. What would you recommend as next steps from there?
So yeah, then I think next steps would be to actually start talking to them about careers within their company and trying to get introductions to others that might actually manage the department that I would want to work in, and then do another educational interview there, deliver some value. And once you've done this and you've got specific enough, you could actually create a position for yourself that isn't posted externally. If you know the hiring manager and you're actually giving her the information that she needs, that she just doesn't have time to work on, it's not costing her anything, and she can develop a relationship with you.
Yeah, I love that. And it's I guess the thing that keeps on coming to my mind as you're talking is like, this is not like, hey, I need a job, like tomorrow we're going to apply to 100 companies and then boom, it's done. This takes some thought, it takes some effort, it takes some time. But if you think about your career in this way, it's going to drastically impact. So it's the long play, right? It's being patient. It's being methodical about the types of things that you're doing. You can't do this method with 50 different companies. Right. This is like, you need to be thoughtful about like which companies you're hiring, or you want to be hired at, which types of positions you want, and kind of go from there. And I love that.
Yeah, the whole concept really is based on a guy named Sagram Vijare, who runs a marketing company, and it's called account-based marketing. So rather than starting with a big sales funnel, he inverts the funnel and he picks, okay, I'm only going to market to these few people. And rather than run ads, I am going to figure out who is the decision maker, and I'm going to get messages directly to them. It's very, very targeted. And the book explains a little bit about how to do that, but for hiring. And it's a very targeted approach. But one of the things that it also does is it helps you become the person that is the right one to hire. So you start thinking like that job title that you want. One of the things that I say in the book is, if you want to become a director of marketing, you need to think like a director of marketing. You need to read what the director of marketing reads. You need to write what they write, be part of the groups they're part of. And so actually doing the virtual internship, you become that marketing director, and you're able to talk like one in interviews and meet people that those people meet.
So cool. Thank you so much for sharing, Ben. So we've come to the end of our time together, which is crazy. It flew by. But tell us, like, if for those folks listening and that will listen when this is posted on MentorLi, where can somebody get a copy of the Get Hired Guarantee? How can someone start digging into this awesome information?
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. So the book is called Get Hired Guarantee. Yesterday's job search won't find today's dream job. It's available on Amazon.com for a $9.99 Kindle version, or $16 for printed. And you can also go to my website for a lot of free resources. It's www.gethiredguarantee.com.
This is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Ben, and looking forward to all of the great success that folks are going to have from this. I'm excited to hear these success stories as they roll out. But thanks for joining us, and looking forward to chatting soon.